I got my orders. It said, you're going to France. And I was overjoyed because when I was in school, I always dreamed and talked about France. I dreamed of coming here to France. I even had a pen pal from France. And so when the order said, you're going to France, like I said, I was overjoyed. And after a couple of port visits, we came to Villefranche and I saw my new home.
Well, the first impression was that it is beautiful. It was beautiful beyond anything I imagined. My only understanding of what it might look like would be from perhaps reading National Geographic magazines.
The opportunity to take in an environment that was so different from all of us, for all of us, than the environment in which we'd been raised. There's nothing like this in the United States.
It was, for me, of course, the first foreign country that I had ever been to. And it was exciting, it was new, it was different, it was an adventure.
And like any 17-year-old kid, I was a little nervous, a little scared, but when I saw Villefranche, I felt like I was at home. It was a beautiful, just a village that I couldn't believe. It took my breath away, actually.
The beauty of the area was the first thing we noticed. We all stood on deck when we pulled in. There were mountains that came right down to the sea, and then all the houses. So it was a visual experience that I'll never forget.
The colors, the history, it was all there, and the water and the mountains all together was such a beautiful impression as you arrive.
The fact that you could be walking along the water line and see 8 to 10 feet down, it was absolutely clear and beautiful and a different color than any water I'd seen before. You'd see the fishermen along the harbor with their long fish poles searching for whitebait or something, anything that they could catch.
As of the 5 ships I was assigned to, nothing beats the Springfield and the Villefranche. That was the highlight of my Navy sea duty.
Sailors tend to attach a nickname to a place.
We called it Villa. Instead of Villefranche, we had a short name. It was Villa. Everything was Villa. Not Villefranche, it was Villa. Let's go to Villa.
My greatest and fondest memories of France, then as today, is la nourriture, or the cooking, or the cuisine, French cuisine, which I think is probably, as you say in French, sans pareil. There's no equivalent.
Like pastis? Yes. I remember that well. I tried it, and then I tried it again, and I tried it again, and then I tried to stand up, and it didn't work out that well. After I tried to stand up, I realized that was a much stronger drink than I anticipated.
I remember I liked it because they put in, I don't recall, the clear liquid in the glass, and then they poured in the pastis, and it got all milky, and I really enjoyed watching that happen.
That occurred to me anyway was I was 18 and I could drink a beer, which in the United States I couldn't drink a beer until I was 21. So I drank a lot of beer.
I came over here at 17, they didn't care. Drink whatever the heck you want. I wasn't even a drinker, I'll be honest with you, I really didn't drink. The guys on board ship sort of said, you have to start drinking. Because I was like a kid, and they would just say, no, come with us, we'll straighten you out.
The Loustelet gave each of us these cards with our names. And I'm sure that was to get us to come back to the bar. But this was for our division, the OI division, on board Little Rock. And I've kept this card since 1963 and brought it with me this trip for obvious reasons.
So obviously they set up and manage these wonderful little drinking establishments along what we call the O2 level.
On the ship, we have different levels, and so you have the O1, O2, O3, it's like going up.
In the O2 level, was also the top of the missile house. And when we would bring weapons aboard, missiles and warheads, they would come in and they would come to the O2 level, and then we would lower them down.
The sailors had decided they were going to name the streets going up in the village O2 level, O3 level, so the famous one was the O2 level, where there were a lot of bars where you could go in and have a good time, have a few beers and so on.
So I had this mental perception of what the O2 level would be like here. I had heard rumors from the sailors that had been here before that was the place to go.
Another reason why they adapted to our culture is they named these bars after states in the U.S. So I'm very fond of the Montana bar. Spent a lot of time there when I was here.
Les bars, ils sont sortis comme des champignons, là. Ah ouais. Le menuisier, celui qui faisait de la mécanique, les commerçants, les magasins, des garages, les épiciers, tout le monde faisait un bar.
Quand ils embarquaient, surtout, ils étaient déjà un peu gays, et souvent ils avaient encore leurs bouteilles, coca ou autre soda. Et quand la vedette partait, nous en slip, on plongeait pour récupérer les bouteilles, pour récupérer la consigne. Mais en même temps, on trouvait souvent un briquet, un zippo, on trouvait des pièces, et on récupérait tout ça. Pour nous, c'était vraiment une aubaine. Hein.
I was assigned, during my time on Springfield, I was assigned as senior shore patrol officer quite often at the fleet landing. And part of my duties was to, with a couple of our shore patrolmen, is to stroll around the O1, the O2 level, different places where the fellas hung out.
Je les amenais à la plage l'été, c'était des cartons entiers d'alcool. Je me demande, ces gars-là, comment ils faisaient? Parce que ce qu'ils buvaient, et récupérer le lendemain frais et dispo, moi, une chose qu'il m'aurait fallu 3 mois pour me remettre. Non, mais c'était des costauds, les gars. C'était des durs.
I heard that, there were sometimes, how do you say, fights between the French guys and the American guys, because the French were like they had girlfriends, and then the Americans were taking the girlfriends for them. So we are not happy that the Americans take our girlfriends, you know.
He punched me right in the chin, and we had white uniforms on, and I was bleeding all over the place. I still got a scar right there.
Only one time having to have a local Frenchman there help me get down from the bar because I had stayed up there too long and I couldn't get back to the Liberty ship to get back to the Little Rock. So fellow volunteered a local French fellow there, and he helped almost carry me down the steps, from the bar. I couldn't make it back on my own.
The only problems we had really were fellas had too many beers. We had a corpsman with us, shore patrol, and if they needed some help to settle down, the corpsman knew what to do to help them settle down. But that was really the only problem, and that didn't happen too frequently.
C'était le jour de l'an. Et dans la nuit, le bateau, à minuit, ils ont mis leurs projecteurs, parce qu'ils avaient des projecteurs pour l'aviation et tout, en cas de combat, ils avaient des trucs de cinéma, vous m'avez compris. Hein. Ils éclairaient tout, le ciel, Villefranche, toutes les maisons, tous les alentours, et le bateau qui klaxonnait, pas de truc de combat, hein, du wou, wou, wou. Et les gens qui sortaient des bars, qui chantaient, qui dansaient, qui s'embrassaient, ils avaient pris des casseroles dans les cuisines, ça cognait de partout. J'ai jamais vu ça à Villefranche, jamais.
The big song at the time that we used to listen to over and over again on that video jukebox was a song by Françoise Hardy, Tour les garçons les filles, if I'm saying that correctly, all the boys and girls. And it was the #1 song in France at the time.
The music, I was surprised to hear it over here. For some reason or another, I thought France had its own music, Greece had its own music, but I was surprised at how much American music was over here.
The bars on the O2 level and those areas, they were playing American music all the time, which I enjoyed. the sailors enjoyed, and it was a little bit of home to experience that.
And one of the things that we typically do is we play the Star-Spangled Banner in the morning when we raise the flag, followed immediately by the Marseillaise. And so the citizens of Villefranche every morning at 8 o'clock would hear the Star-Spangled Banner followed by the Marseillaise. And they told me when I was leaving the port, Calderoni told me, he says, this is something the citizens of Villefranche look forward to. I was worried that we were making too much noise at 8 o'clock in the morning. He said, absolutely not. He says, continue that. Every time somebody sees me in the street, they say, voilà le bateau américain, il sonne l'anthème des États-Unis et de la France. And I said, well, if you like me to do that, I'll do it. And I said, is the volume too loud? He said, pas du tout. He said, the volume is just right.
Il y avait assez de Français qui parlaient anglais avec tout le temps qu'il y avait les navires, qui n'étaient pas dépaysés en arrivant. Mais les autres, il y avait beaucoup qui parlaient un peu de français. Au bout de très peu de temps, leur français s'est amélioré. Les gens qui ont vécu ici ont gardé plus qu'un peu d'influence. Sans exception, les gens de Springfield à qui j'ai parlé hier ont dit qu'ils regrettent de ne pas avoir trouvé un appartement, acheté une petite maison ou quelque chose déjà il y a 20 ans ou 30 ans pour venir souvent.
I had no background in French, to be quite honest with you. And I thought it would be an issue. I thought it would be a problem, but it turns out it didn't, because for the most part, people spoke English. They spoke better English than I did French, let me put it that way. They made themselves understood where I couldn't. Okay, so I appreciated that. They were very nice to me.
C'est une question d'adaptation. Mon mari a appris le français lorsque nous sommes connus. Il parlait bien parce qu'il étudiait le français à bord.
I only spoke French till 4 or 5 years old, till we left and went back to the States. When I went back to the States, I didn't know any English, and I had to learn it all.
We always embraced the culture that we found here, and that was the thing that our parents gave to us that I think was most valuable. A lot of people who grew up as what we call Navy brats did not like moving all around, having to change schools, having to be uprooted every 3 years. But my parents always told us to appreciate it as an adventure, and so we did.
The foods, the drinks, but it was the people that was number one, which was unique.
Les gens du pays, les riverains, étaient très ouverts envers les Américains. Il y avait un peu de tension entre les Américains au point de vue politique, parce qu'il y avait des choses écrites sur les murs qui étaient vraiment pas tellement jolies contre les Américains. Mais dans l'ensemble, non, tout allait bien.
The people are very friendly, and particularly the generation before mine, who remember World War II and who remember the effort that the United States made to help liberate France from the Nazi yoke, are very, very grateful and appreciative of Americans.
Alors quand j'allais à bord, c'était marrant parce que personne n'allait à bord du Springfield. Quelques femmes d'officiers y allaient. Et quand je voulais y aller, alors je lui disais, Ronnie, parce qu'on l'appelait Ronnie, je peux aller la semaine prochaine. Oui, tu viens. Ouais. Il m'attendait sur le quai, on prenait l'embarcation on montait dans l'embarcation et on allait à bord comme si rien n'était. Et personne ne me disait rien.
We have the bridge team that directs the navigation of the ship.
Dans le pays, par contre, il y avait une camaraderie extraordinaire. Les gens se connaissaient, se parlaient. On n'avait pas grand-chose à l'époque. Mais tout le monde était très amical. C'était très bien. C'était une grande famille, pour ainsi dire.
My friend Richard Kazar, he had a girlfriend that was from Villefranche, and she had a friend named Noelle Gras. So I got to meet her, and eventually we went on a couple of tours. We went up to Ez by the sea.
We saw a couple of men and women together off in the grass, and we decided we'd better not stay around. And so we didn't get to the top of the mountain. We came on back down to the highway. We didn't want to disturb anybody.
Some of my friends who'd been on the ship longer knew some people that were nurses at the British American Hospital, and they said, you know, come with us to this dance or party we're having. And I went to the party, and there were, I don't know, 100 people maybe total. Some from the officers from the Springfield, some were people from Villefranche, from Nice. And there was a young lady from, she actually lived in Nice, that I met and danced with a few times. And it turned out to be a long-term relationship. We dated for off and on the 3 years I was here. She's still a friend. She's married to a physician, and they live in one of the towns near Saint-Paul-de-Vence now. I married the lady I mentioned that I met at the University of Georgia. I married her after I got back from Villefranche in the Springfield. We've now been married 50 years, but we've come and visited Villefranche together since then, brought our own children along, and we've stayed friends with this young lady that I dated and her husband, the physician. We've been friends, and our children have played together while we have meals at restaurants, and it's been a fantastic relationship. They've been very nice people, and we've stayed in touch.
My old girlfriend from my Villefranche days attended this. She considers herself an honorary Springfield person. Her mother lived in Monaco, and she was down here quite regularly. She introduced me to my wife, who came from Monaco.
Le premier jour que j'ai débarqué du bateau ici en France, là encore, j'étais à Nice. Et bien sûr, comme pratiquement tous les marins, on faisait un arrêt à cette fameuse USO Club, United Service Organization. Et la première personne à qui j'ai dit hello, c'était une Française. Bon, on était content de se voir, on était content de discuter, de parler, on restait toujours au club. De temps en temps, on allait se promener un petit peu dans Nice ou même à Villefranche. Mais c'était quelqu'un qui m'était devenu très cher. Et puis après, arrive ce qui arrive, j'ai demandé sa mère. Et nous nous sommes mariés en avril de 1963. On est reparti aux États-Unis en septembre 1963 parce que j'ai terminé mon service militaire. Et nous sommes retournés en Floride, là où il y avait mes parents et mes frères et tout ça. Et nous sommes restés 2 ans et demi là-bas. Et après, on a décidé de revenir en France. Nous sommes revenus en mai 1966 et j'habite toujours là. Voilà.
And 2 of my villa mates ended up marrying somebody here. I went to 2 different weddings here just in the 7 months.
Rosie Martin épousait un Américain. Il s'appelait Chuck Calvert. Et c'est au mariage de Rosie, donc nous étions amis, que mon mari et moi nous sommes connus.
In 1960, I was invited to a wedding, and my wife, her name was Eliane Vesperini from Villefranche. She was invited to the wedding also, and we met at the wedding reception. And we started dating in 1960. We got engaged in 1961 because we liked each other very, very much. And in 1962, we were married in Villefranche at the Saint-Michel, Église Saint-Michel, by Father Lorenzoni, who was here for a long, long time. And the rest is history. We've been married, this year will be 55 years. I used to come back every year when my my wife's parents were alive, to see them, and we would visit, and sometimes, occasionally, they would come to the United States and visit with us.
Ma mère a toujours dit, je préfère voir ma fille loin et heureuse que près et malheureuse. Donc, maman s'était bien acclimatée à l'idée d'aller me marier. Mon père était plus réticent, mais dès qu'il a connu mon mari, il a aimé de suite et il n'y a pas eu de problème.
My association with Villefranche was when I was quite young, between 8 and 10 years old, because my father was stationed in the Navy, and he was stationed aboard the USS Salem. And we were here for 2 years. But my mother and my 3 other siblings, younger siblings, lived on Cap Ferrat in a villa, and it was called Villa Mitsuko.
So I was born in Monterey, California, when Dad was going to school at Fort Ord, and this is my whole life, is life with a father who's in the military, and he was always gone. So whenever he was here, he made sure he made time with us. And he also made sure that we all did sports and swam and exercise and walking, and yeah, that's just the life of a military brat as I know it.
When my father would come in, it would be a big occasion because, you know, maybe they were away for 3 months or something, and we would all go down, get all dressed up, and we'd all go down to the pier or the quay and wait for the ship to come in, and then it was a big deal, and everybody was happy and all the kids behaved.
Mon père, il venait d'arriver s'est engagé dans l'US Navy et est arrivé sur l'USS Springfield, donc en 1965. Et il allait dans son restaurant et il voyait ma mère qui faisait la cuisine et donc il voulait l'inviter à sortir, à danser. Donc ils ont eu une aventure amoureuse et à l'issue de cette union, donc lui il avait des missions qui se faisaient à l'étranger et bon, ils avaient un échange par courrier, par lettre que j'ai tout à la maison.
When my mother would put out a flag on the balcony, when the flag was out, that meant we must come home to Tweed. That was it. Get home, time for dinner, but we would look, and if the flag wasn't out, we could play all day. I was French flag, which we took back to California. The French flag would be out on the balcony. As soon as we saw it, we knew we had to get home. And so she pretty much knew within the hour time frame we would be home.
So my father was he actually was working for the Navy on the ships there, and my mother came from Villefranche.
So Mom Germaine was my grandmother, and she passed away in 1959, so I didn't know her. I didn't have the chance to know her.
Mom Germaine, of course. Who else?
Ma Germaine, huh? We ain't our Ma. So allez up.
You don't know about me?
What are we supposed to know?
Where are you from? The ship.
The Salem.
And nobody told you about Mom Germaine?
No.
So you find out for yourself.
She was a very generous person. She used to look after all the people who needed help.
Mom Germaine became like a surrogate mother for the entire ship.
One thing about Mom Germaine is that I had learned, actually when I first got here, that her oldest daughter, Claire, had married a sailor who had served on our ship, and that she had a very strong feeling for our ship, the Betelgeuse. It was named after the brightest star in the constellation of Orion.
The first person who they think of when they needed help was my grandmother. And it's like a mom. When you need help, the first person you think of is your mom.
Being in Villefranche, home ported there, the only ship in the area, no other support around. People were like a family.
The other ships in the fleet were coming over for 6-month tours, but the Des Moines was here for 2 years. And so it became a home for us.
I just remember I'd hop on the bus, it would take me along the water, and I'd get off someplace that I can't remember now. Then I'd walk up a few blocks, and there I was, my second home away from home. So,
General de Gaulle, President de Gaulle, announced the withdrawal of France from NATO. General de Gaulle had some objections to NATO policy and U.S. defense policy, that the proliferation of nuclear weapons was not a good thing, and General de Gaulle wanted the French to have nuclear weapons. He called it his force de frappe. Well, he ordered American NATO forces to leave France.
Sad day, I think, for Villefranche and for the U.S. Navy, both. Yeah. There was a love here between the people who were here and the sailors, and we all got along. It was wonderful. You know, we come into port and there was bonjour. We could all say bonjour for sure.
you know, when we were leaving, we just pulled outside the harbor, and some of us were alongside there on the main deck, and we still had some French money in our pockets, and we threw a franc out into the water as, you know, wishing that we could come back.
January 20th, the flagship left Villefranche. Most of the officers and personnel who were stationed ashore in our office in the DOS, most of them had gone on to Villefranche, and I was the last American left standing in Villefranche.
And it was, you know, it was a very sad day, you could tell. And the weather wasn't very nice. It was sort of like this morning, overcast, threatening to rain. It was breezy, and we were putting up banners on the ship that would trail behind the ship, supported by big red balloons. And I remember we were having trouble getting them to go up. They kept getting tangled in the helicopter that was on the after deck.
I didn't want to leave. I would have stayed, for sure, at that time. As I say, I mean, I had friends here and some very close ones, and would have liked to stay. But in the military, you go where they tell you, so that's where we had to leave. A piece of myself is still here.
You know, the local people that you knew, that you were friendly with, they would say, well, you'll be back in March. And at the time I said, no, I'm leaving. They said, no, you're part of the flag company. You'll be back. Your flag company people, they said, you usually serve 2 years. When you went with the, you know, you served a 2-year period of time. And those that I met, they transferred from ship to the Salem, to the, you know, they kept doing that for about 2 years, tour of duty. And so they expected you would, you know, be back, and they would tell you, you'll be back. And I said, no, I'm leaving, you know. So it was sad.
As I say, I'm crying when the ship left, when I was not on the ship, when I saw it leave past the Cap Ferrat lighthouse, which you could always tell where you were when you saw that. And that was a very sad day.
When he knew that he had to leave and was under orders to leave, he took the ship out of the Bay of Villefranche around the point, Cap de Nice, and sailed her down parallel to the Promenade des Anglais at a very slow speed, and had sailors man the rail, which means they were dressed in their uniforms and they stood arm's length apart along the rail. A very impressive sight under any circumstances, but in this case it was particularly poignant because the ship was being steered at a very low speed, absolutely parallel to La Promenade des Anglais. And many, many Niçois stopped their cars on the promenade, got out, stood on the sidewalk of the Promenade des Anglais, and waved their handkerchiefs in between wiping their eyes and blowing their noses, wave the handkerchiefs in goodbye salute to the Springfield. When I watched the ship leave the Villefranche harbor,
I went up on the edge of one of the hillsides here where I had a good view of the ship sailing parallel to Nice. And I was in uniform, and many, many local people came up to me and hugged me without words or said, je suis désolé, or something to that effect, and expressed their sorrow.
A number of bumboats being out in the harbor area and people coming by with signs. And it was a big day for the community as well when you think of the number of sailors that had passed through here over the years and the ties they had to the community and the economic impact on the community. It must have been pretty substantial when you take that number of families out of the area.
Ils ont beaucoup fait vivre Villefranche et les histoires que j'ai entendues petites, c'était que lorsqu'ils sont partis, justement, il y a 50 ans tout juste, beaucoup de bars ont fermé. Pour l'économie, ça a été beaucoup moins bien pour l'économie de Villefranche.
De ce moment-là, de ces années du 6e flotte, j'en suis certain que a laissé une partie de son âme qui est partie avec les marins. Bon, Villefranche sera toujours là et Villefranche, c'est dans mon cœur, ça sera toujours.
I think that's how lots of them have a souvenir of Villefranche, like their favorite liberty, you know? It's for them the best moment in their life. Lots of them told me that. They were saying, the best time in my life, the best moment in my life was in Villefranche.
The last day, the last visit I had over there, I'm a little embarrassed to say it, but I broke down and started crying like a little baby because I could not believe, it just hurt so much to leave, you know, so it was a very emotional day for me.
You would be moving into a similar sort of existence, you'd just be in a different town. We were leaving a culture. We were leaving a whole way of life. We were leaving great memories of, it's just like, wow.
For the last X number of years, I'd been involved in military life. And now I was going back to civilian life. So it was maybe a double sword. One was, I had no idea what I was going to do when I got home. And secondly, I was leaving one of the most beautiful areas in the world to go back to an unknown location. I was going back to Florida, where my parents lived, but I had no idea what I was walking into. So it was a little bit of angst, if you will. What are you going to do next?
I think we had 2 weeks there with him, and he left for Vietnam. And that was September. The following year, August 19th, 1969, his plane was listed as missing in action. And then it wasn't until 10 years after the plane was actually shot down did Mom change the status to killed in action. 22 years after the ship left, but 20 years after Dad was shot down, we all came back here to Villefranche, and it was Mother's Day. I remember that too. We had dinner, Mother's Day dinner at Le Mer Germain, which was, that's always special when you come here. And that's when the emotions surfaced for all of us. Emotions that I think we all tucked away in our pockets and tried to be strong in front of each other. And then when we all came here is when it surfaced. And it was Therapy. Therapy we didn't even realize we all needed, and it was so nourishing. It was so good.
Et après, bon, il est parti pour le Vietnam. Donc il a été muté pour le Vietnam et ma mère s'est retrouvée enceinte et bon, pensait qu'il avait abandonné, qu'il était parti sans donner d'adresse, tout ça. Mon père avait des doutes, a envoyé un de ses meilleurs amis rencontrer ma mère pour savoir si vraiment elle était enceinte, chose qu'il n'a pas fait parce que elle ne l'a jamais vue. Et lui a dit non, c'est pas vrai, elle n'est pas enceinte. Donc lui, il a fait ça, il a continué sa vie. Puis ma mère, ben, moi je suis né, puis elle m'a élevé ici à Villefranche. Et en France, il y a un site internet, généalogie.com, et il y avait recherche au niveau des USA. Et je me suis rendu compte qu'en fait, je n'étais pas le seul. Parce qu'il y avait beaucoup de bases en France. Beaucoup d'Américains sont tombés amoureux de Françaises. Il y a eu des mariages, il y a eu des naissances. Et j'ai vu que je n'étais pas le seul. Du coup, là, j'ai pu avoir une adresse, donc dans le Minnesota, Minneapolis, et puis j'ai écrit, quoi. Et 3 semaines après, j'ouvre ma boîte aux lettres, et je vois une enveloppe des USA, avec petite en tête, Jacques McMullen, à mon nom. Et il a lu la lettre, il buvait son café, et il tombait des nues, quoi. Et alors, ça lui a remémoré toute son histoire avec ma mère. Comment ça se fait que lui, en voyant son ami, il n'a pas pu lui dire qu'elle était enceinte? Comment ça se fait? Bref, pendant quelques jours, il est resté comme ça et il en a parlé avec sa nouvelle femme et il a dit « Écoute, qu'est-ce que je fais ?» Il a dit « Vas-y, écris. » Donc il a écrit. Et mon père, donc c'est un retraité de la police du comté de Hennepin. Et moi, je suis aussi policier. Et puis, on a commencé à correspondre par Internet, par mail. Bon, ça a été tous les jours, hein. Et on a décidé de l'inviter. Donc il est arrivé au mois d'août, bon, ça a été vite. Il est venu pendant 1 mois, 3 semaines, 1 mois. Et bon, la première journée, quand on s'est vu à l'aéroport, c'était énorme. Énorme. On est arrivé, il y a eu les enfants, ma femme, j'ai même amené le chien pour que tout le monde participe à cette journée merveilleuse. Et il m'est tombé dans les bras, il s'est mis à pleurer, on s'est mis à pleurer, et puis c'était très, 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 très émouvant. Et par la suite, j'ai rencontré tout le reste de ma famille. L'année d'après, on est parti aux États-Unis. Et chaque fois que je vais aux États-Unis, parce que maintenant j'y vais assez souvent, mais ma famille elle vient aussi, on va là-bas, on est considéré comme américain, quoi. Ils font pas de différence. Ici, je suis français, et là-bas, je suis américain. Voilà.
So then I was living in Switzerland and Germany. I was living all over the place. And so I kept coming back to Villefranche because this was my heart. This is where everything began. And everything else was nice to have, but Villefranche was really where the heart was. And I'd always go to Mer Germain, and I'd always sit and have these memories of running around and playing in Villefranche.
Je crois que je peux dire que je me sentais tout de suite chez moi, home away from home. Oui.
In fact, if I had not had my girlfriend in Ohio, I'm not sure I would have gone back. The first on the Des Moines, I just couldn't tell the mademoiselle. I couldn't offer to marry her. There were certain things that come to light that I just wasn't real secure about. And so, to me, Villefranche was home.
It's what we all agreed we had to do, come back. And we've been able to keep that connection so strongly that we're back together again. And it's a unique experience and a wonderful experience for me.
My wife and I did go on a Mediterranean cruise. I gotta say it was 10 years ago? About 10 years ago, I guess. And this was the first port for that cruise, Villefranche. And that was the only port I looked forward to. I told my wife, I don't care where we're going to Villefranche. I don't want to hear anything else. I'm going to Villefranche. That was the first port. And I pointed out, I said, yeah, let's go see that's when I went back. I said, let me go see the O2 level. I said, I got to see what's up there. And I was just like flabbergasted. Oh man, the bars, they're not here anymore. Things change. What are you gonna do, you know?
Even though I was so young when I lived here, there was something that must have happened to me as a young person that was positive, obviously, and that was joyful, that when I came back again after that, it was like coming home. It's like now, it's like coming home. I can't tell you why I feel that way, but it's obviously, I think it has to do with a happy time in my life, and happy time in my parents' life, and I don't know why I'm getting emotional, but anyway, it's a very special place.
The people are still the same. They're still as nice. The village hasn't really changed that much. I like the colors. It just hasn't changed in my mind. It's the same. And like I said, I'm thinking about retiring here.
You know, I mean, it's great to be back with, you know, there's, I think, 2 other fellows that were on the ship at the same time. So to come back with fellows that you served with, it's very meaningful, very nostalgic, to know that, you know, that you and your buddies, you know, 54 years ago, you were here, you know, and the things you did together. And now you're back together again in the same space, walking the same streets, the same cobblestones. I mean, it's very nostalgic, you know.
Beaucoup d'émotions de nouveau, beaucoup de... j'ai parlé de John Kimball que je connais personnellement. Peut-être il y en aura 1 ou 2 ou 3 autres dans l'ensemble que je ne suis pas au courant pour le moment, qui vont débarquer, qu'on va se retrouver.
Surprisingly, I ran into at the very first event in the Gare Maritime, meeting different people and what ship are you from and so forth. And this gentleman walks up, and he and his wife, and so I looked down at his badge, and I saw, you know, Springfield. And I looked at the name, John Ramey. I thought, boy, I know a John Ramey. I remember a John Ramey. And I looked at him again, and I said that to him. I said, that's interesting. Your name, I knew a fellow by that name. And I looked at him again, I went, oh my gosh, I think it's you. You went to the University of Maryland, you played lacrosse? He goes, yes. Oh my God. And he looks at me again and he goes, the same thing. Oh, for heaven's sake, yes.
We have close ties. We need to continue that. And our ties with the Navy at Villefranche is one that bears keeping straight.
I think it is one of the most significant keys to any success we have. The United States and the United States Navy knows that we're never going to go it alone, that we need our partners in any region that we operate in. This is their water, they understand it, and I think we learn from each other, we get better from each other, from working with each other, and when the time comes, because of that interoperability and the ability to work together on a routine basis, if the time comes to fight and win, I'm confident that we will as a coalition. So today is not an ending, it's just the next, and it's a relationship that will continue. It's a partnership that will continue.
That history is so important to both the United States and to France, and to the people, and to how we work together to come through such a horrible time in our lives, and to have that connection, because if we don't remember that, we don't remember where we came from, then it's difficult to know how to go forward.
There are differences. I mean, we speak different languages, and we have, sometimes we have different forms of government, but we're all the same. We all basically are the same. We have the same desires and wants for our lives. We want we want to have a happy life. We want what's best for our children. We want our children to have a better life than we had, and that's universal.